Psalms chapter 2, I'm going to read the entire chapter. Don't have a heart attack, it's only 12 verses. Just found out I was preaching this morning. Had a little scheduling difficulty. We're gonna take care of that though. But I've entitled tonight's message, Why Do the Heathen Rage? Psalms chapter 2, beginning in verse 1, the Bible says, Why do the heathen rage? And the people imagine a vain thing. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us break. I'm not on. Let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O you kings. Be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much, Lord, for who you are. We thank you for your love. Father, we thank you for the great service we had this morning, the great host you brought to the house of God, the power the pastor preached with, the truth that's undeniable. Father, we thank you already for the blessing tonight's service has been. We love you, Lord, and we want to glorify you in everything we do. Give us attentive hearts and minds to your word this evening. In Jesus' name, amen. Why do the heathen rage? I think, if we're honest with ourselves, we have to say that this portion of Scripture is definitely manifesting itself in our life today. Now, I know this Scripture is actually prophetic of the second advent of Christ, with the exception of verse number 6 and 7. It's talking about the second advent, the second coming of Christ. But I think we can take this chapter and we can apply it somewhat today, because the heathen are most certainly raging. The kings of this world, the people in power, they seemingly, all they want to do is plot to destroy God's word and God's church and Christianity, to restrict the message. So as we look at this text tonight, I want to look at a few things. I first want to look at the raging of the heathen nation. And then secondly, I want us to look at the response of the Lord. And finally, the rejoicing we can have as believers. The raging of the heathen nations. Verse 1 says, why do the heathen rage? David's asking the question, why do they rage? Why do the people imagine a vain thing? What is so horrible about God on his throne and the truth of God's word that the world sets itself in array against it constantly. And if you don't believe that's true, you just really need to watch the news or read the paper. Because the kings of this earth, the powers that be, hate Jesus Christ. And they hate the church of Jesus Christ. And every thought, every design in their little brains is to bring about the end of the gospel. Verse 2 says, the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. No other religion, no other thought, no other idea in the history of man has been so hated and so despised by the rulers of this world than the gospel of Jesus Christ and the message of salvation. Because they're influenced by the prince of the power of the air, the ruler of this world. He's deceived them. He's allowed them to believe a lie. He has told them, he's blinded them to the truth, and has told them that man is God and that we set our own destiny. All you have to do is read the paper. All you have to do is read the paper, listen to the radio, watch the news, and time after time, as the pastor talked about today, Christianity is being attacked, and our freedoms in America are being taken away. They say, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. You know, if you listen to the mainstream media and to the news outlets of the world, they would have you think that Christians control the world. And that every small court victory and every small edict and every small law that these wicked heathen men pass is just freeing the world from the bonds of Christianity. My friend, the truth is that the only freedom, the only hope of freedom is Christianity. But the heathen rage. And it can be a frightening thing. You know, I have two children, a 14-year-old and a soon-to-be 8-year-old. And there's children in the audience tonight, and most of us have children or grandchildren, and it makes you wonder when you see the state of the world, what is going to be there in 10 or 15 years as the Lord delays his coming? What are things going to be like? Are we going to be allowed to assemble at 9501 Highland Avenue? Or will they put a lock on the door? It can be scary. It can be overwhelming. It has caused some people to despair and to quit. Some people have decided you can't beat them. And as the old saying goes, you can't beat them, join them. But we need to understand, Christian, this world is not our friend. This world is not our buddy. This world doesn't have our best interest at heart. They may tell us they do, and in their twisted brains somehow they may think they do, but you're the enemy to them. And Christian, let me tell you this. You have no business befriending the world. We're to reach out to them. We're to share the gospel message. But we're not to befriend them. Because your friends influence who you are. And when you're friends with the world, your ideology begins to change. Your thought process begins to change. And inevitably, the world will get under your skin. Now, I'm not saying that the people we work with that are lost and our neighbors, we shouldn't be kind, we shouldn't be friendly to. But we must understand that they are part of the enemy's plan. And the heathen are raging against us. And then in the text, we have the response of the Lord. You know, this world, they think they're something else, don't they? They really do. They smirk when they give down their little laws, and they put their little orders into action, and they lock churches, and they bully Christians around. They think they're just king of the hill, don't they? Look at verse 4. It says, he that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. Turn over to the book of Isaiah. Isaiah chapter number 40. This is God's opinion of the nations. Chapter 40. We'll start with verse number 15. Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, he that taketh up the isles as a very little thing. Then verse 16 says, Lebanon is not sufficient to burn, nor the beast thereof sufficient for burnt offering. Now look at verse 17. All nations before him are as nothing, and they are counted to him less than nothing and vanity. See, the nations are raging, the heathen are raging against the Lord and against his anointed one and against his people, and the Lord in heaven laughs because he realizes how impotent, how tiny they really are. See, we are in the midst of the battle. And sometimes we as Christians feel like we're outnumbered and outgunned. But can I tell you, the God of this universe has more guns than they can imagine. And he's a firm believer of the Second Amendment. The right to bear arms. And someday, he's going to bring them full bore on the nations of this world. And he's going to reduce them to that drop in the bucket, that dust that they are. And the mighty, the proud, the ones that revile God, the ones that revile the church, the ones that torment the believer, the ones that are persecuting the church overseas, they're going to face the laughter of a righteous God as his judgment comes down upon them. Why do the heathen rage? Because they don't have sense to know who God is. Christian, let me tell you, that should encourage you. You are on the winning side. I heard a preacher years ago. I was 6 or 7 years old. I don't remember anything about his sermon except one statement, and he had a dummy. He was a ventriloquist guy. Clyde Hyde, I think, was at Sherry's mom and dad's church. I don't remember anything about the sermon. Don't really remember anything about the dummy. But I remember the preacher said this. How do you know you're on the winning side? Because I read the end of the story. Christian, let me tell you this. The heathen are going to rage. The nations are going to turn against you. Things could get very tough in America. But I've read the end of the book. And that king is going to laugh. And that judgment is going to come down. And we're going to get to see it. That's pretty cool. Then, verse 5, shall he speak unto them in his wrath and vex them in his sore displeasure. We'll be just like that child. I'll tell you what, Doesn't work so well with my teenager anymore. But there was a time when Christian was little. And all Daddy had to do was speak in that serious daddy voice. And Christian knew he was in trouble. You know, it's like when you use the whole name, the first, middle, and last name, you know you're in trouble. Someday these leaders are going to hear their first, middle, and last name called, and they're going to know they're in trouble. And finally, I told you I was going to be short. There's a rejoicing that the believer can have. See, times, they're strange. We live in a very strange time. And those of you that live longer than me, you got to think it's really strange because I'm 41 and it makes my head spin to see how much we've changed in the 41 years that I've been alive. But there was a time when nothing was open on Sunday. Church was the most important thing going on Sunday. God's Word was the most important book you could read. You were allowed to bow your head and pray in the public school system. No one challenged the Pledge of Allegiance saying under God. No one questioned if a monument had a cross in it. Times are strange. Times are evil. But we can rejoice. Let's look back at the text. Verse number 11 says, serve the Lord with fear. And you say, Brother Tim, that's a strange phrase there. I thought we were supposed to love God. I was supposed to, I'll tell you what, there's something to be said about having a healthy dose of fear of the Lord. I think a lot of times we don't fear the Lord. We don't put the Lord where he belongs, so we don't fear him. We look at him as the old man upstairs. Or we sing the Bette Midler song, God is watching us from a distance. And we don't realize that we're talking about the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning, the end, the author of life, the immortal God, the one who spoke the stars into existence. And if he took his pinky finger off this globe for 1 second, we'd spin into oblivion. So I think it's okay to have a healthy dose of fear. I feared my dad my entire growing up life, and I still loved him, but I feared him. Sometimes I still fear him. You don't have to be one or the other. It's part of that parent-child relationship. That's one of the reasons parent-child relationships are so screwed up. It's because there is no fear anymore because the child thinks he's on the same level as the parent because the parents told him they are. But we need to serve the Lord with fear. Why with fear? Because he's God. He knows every thought I have, which terrifies me. If you all knew some of the thoughts I've had in my life, you wouldn't let me stand up here. But God knows them, and he called me to be up here. Now, it says one of two things. He loves me an awful lot, or he's crazy. I'm going to go with B. I think he's crazy. But he's God. And his ways are not my ways. His thoughts are not my thoughts. They're higher. They're better. And when I don't understand, I can have the faith to trust him. We're supposed to serve him with fear. Why do the heathen rage? Why do they turn against us? Because they're heathen. Because they don't want anything to do with God. We're supposed to be different. Now, more than ever, we need to be servants. Did you hear me? Now, more than ever before, we need to be servants. We need to have that heart of a servant. And part of the servant's heart is grounded in fear. We don't want to displease God. You know, one of the reasons I didn't end up a mess, me and Brother Tim Hargis, we have this talk a lot. One of the reasons we didn't end up going off the deep end is because we had a healthy fear of the consequences. And as a Christian, you can help your Christian walk by having a healthy fear of disappointing the Lord. You know, a lot of times we have this idea and this attitude that I'm saved and that's all I need to worry about. But the Bible tells us that we've got a job to do. And the Bible tells us that there are a heaven to be gained and rewards to be earned. And I want to be someone that has something to lay at the feet of the one who gave himself for me. And if that's not your heart's desire as a Christian, I would really be concerned about the state of my soul. We're to serve the Lord with fear. Now the second part of this verse is even crazier. Rejoice with trembling. You know, the first time I read that verse, I really scratched my head because we always associate trembling with fear. But you know what? You can tremble for a lot of other reasons. You can tremble with joy. You can tremble with expectation. Tell you what, I remember this. Vicky's going to be mad at me about the first time we kissed. Now, she probably won't remember this, but the first time we kissed, she trembled. She did. I rocked her world. That's right. And it was so. It wasn't like noticeable, but you know, when you're in a relationship or whatever, you notice those little bitty subtle things. And I'll tell you what, the day we got married, and that beautiful lady walks down that aisle, my knees were knocking. And I wasn't afraid of her. But I was so happy. See, we need to rejoice with trembling. That's the kind of emotion that God needs to stir in our heart. That's the kind of love that we need to have in our heart for our Lord and our Savior. And a lot of us, unfortunately, don't have that kind of love. A lot of us aren't even sure we love Him at all. How sad is that? You say, Brother Tim, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that. When you have to ask yourself the question, do I love the Lord? You need to ask it this way. Do I act like I love the Lord? Because you're not going to have the question if you love Him, if your life reflects that love. The people that have the questions, the people that have the doubts, are the ones that their life doesn't reflect the love. I'll tell you what, man, husband, you ever get to the sorry state where your wife has to walk up and ask if she loves you, let me tell you something, you're doing something wrong. If she doesn't know you love her, you're doing something wrong. If God has to ask you, do you love me? You're doing something wrong. Peter, after Peter had denied the Lord 3 times, Jesus came to him and he said, Peter, do you love me? And Peter said, yeah, Lord. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. Then he said, Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord. Feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? Lord, you know that. I do. Feed my lambs. Love requires action. The kind of love we need to have to serve with fear and rejoice with trembling is a kind of love that's undeniable. it flows from our hearts. It's the kind of love that the world looks across and they see. People know I love Vicki just because of the way I look at her. I can't help but smile when I look at her. Even when she makes me mad. And when you love the Lord, you know what? The people around you are going to see that in your countenance. They're going to see that in your actions. They're going to see you trembling a little bit every now and then. And let's finally look at the last part of verse number 12. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. The heathen are going to rage. The nations are going to turn against us. They're going to do everything in our power to make life rough. They're going to do everything in our power to squash us and to beat us down. But we can have rejoicing because the Bible says that when we put our trust in him, we're blessed. There can be no greater promise from God than that. I'm going to bless you when you trust me. What gives the missionary the courage to go into a country where Christianity is illegal and share the gospel? Blessed are all those that put their trust in him. See, the heathen can rage. They've carried out their attacks against God's Son. They carried out their attacks against God's church. They drove nails into his hands and feet. Those nails are turned to rust, and Jesus is alive today. They wove together a crown of thorns and placed it on his head. Those thorns have since turned to dust. But the love of Jesus is alive today. The people of God are still here today. Blessed are all they that put their trust in them. The heathen are going to rage. But God has a response for them. And believer, despite it all, we can rejoice. Because we have the King of Kings and Lord of Lords in our corner. And no matter what the heathen do, he is still on the throne. His word is still the truth. And his blood is the only way to redemption. Stand, heads bowed, eyes closed.